Okay, so let's finish up 7.7, which is this makes us the part 2. So this is special product factoring, but now we're getting into the solving aspect. So not only do you have to do the special product factoring, but now you have to take it one more step. So this really isn't difficult. There's just 2 stages. So let's look at the note packet at number 19. So I have x squared minus 144 equals 0. So the first step I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take and make sure what I have. Well, this is a difference of squares because it is a binomial, and I have a square root at the end, the number I can square root at the ends. The variable is squared, and an important aspect is you have to have at least one negative sign. So either the x squared would have to be negative, or the number that I'm going to be square rooting is going to have to be negative. So in this case, it meets all qualifications. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So we're going to take the groupings and break it down. So the square root of 144 we know to be 12. We have one positive, one negative. The square root of x squared, remember it means split it in half, is going to be x and x. Now, refresher, this is 7.4. We are going to take each grouping and set them equal to 0. So remember we talked about the quick factoring, or the quick solving in this case. So what I'm going to do is look at this and go, oh, the opposite of subtraction is addition. And when I move it across, we know it's going to become positive 12. In this one, when I move it across, the equal sign is going to become negative 12. And folks, remember, since we don't have a number on the x squares, we just leave them 12 and negative 12 for your answers. So that's all you had to do for that particular problem. Let's look at number 20. So number 20, we have, okay, a couple of things that has to happen. So let's talk about some steps. So the first step you should always do is check to see if everyone is on the same side. So you always want to check to see if everybody's on the same side. Step 2, is it written? Is it written in descending power order? Remember, we talked about that in chapter 6, a little bit more in 7.1 when we were rewriting those. So make sure it's in descending power order. Number 3 is easy, factor. So number 3, we just factor. And then number 4 is going to be solve. So the 4 steps that you have to do, you kind of just need a beginning spot, and it should be checked to make sure everybody's on the same side. If they're not, move it. Remember, the variable squared needs the same positive. So if it's already positive, don't move him, move the other one. Well, in this case, a 49 is going to need to be moved. So we subtract it across, and I get 9y squared minus 49 equals 0. Now remember, don't forget to set it equal to 0 because there's an equal sign to begin with. You have to put the equal 0. So I know I'm solving. If I haven't answered that question, or if you haven't caught that yet, we know we're solving when there's an equal sign in the original question. Okay? So in this case, we know we're solving. So that's the first step. Second step, is it written in descending power order? And the answer is yes. Y squared, no y. So we're good. Step 3, we're going to factor. Well, this looks just like the one we did. The only difference is it has a number in the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the square root of 9. We're going to take half of y squared, which is y, one positive, one negative, and the square root of 49 is 7. And then step 4, the last step, we're going to take and we're going to solve. So set each one equal to 0. Now let's do a little bit of refresher. In 7.4, what I told you was if you have a grouping like this, you can do a quick step. Whoever is attached to the variable is your denominator. So in this case, both of the denominators are going to be 3. The numerical coefficient that is not attached to the variable, it's just going to be the numerator. So in this case, 7 is going to be for both of these. Now, how do you know if they're going to have the same sign or switch? Well, if it's in parentheses, we know we're going to set them equal to 0. So when you subtract the 7 on the first one, that means I'm going to change the sign. And in this one, we are going to add the 7. So it's going to have the positive sign. Okay? Now, let's look at number 21, because this one is not dealing with a binomial, it's dealing with a trinomial. Trinomial has the same 4 rules that we had a moment ago, but it's a 3-term. That's how I know that it's going to be a perfect square and not a difference of squares. Perfect squares are a little easier. We still check to make sure everybody's on the same side. We still make sure they're written in descending order. But to factor it, you just need to make sure that you can do the square root of the outer ends. So once again, I can do the square root of c squared, and I can do the square root of 49. So if that's true, then we can actually set it up. So the first 2 checked out. The third one, we're going to break down. So the square root of c squared, remember we cut it in half. So it's just c and c. The only thing the middle is used for is the check step and the sign. So we need the sign now, so they're both going to be positive. And then the last one is getting the square root of 49, which is going to be 7. So when we do our OI check, which that's how we're going to determine if it really is the correct factors, it is 7c plus 7c, which is going to give me 14c. So therefore, my answer is c plus 7 quantity squared equals 0. Step 4 is your final step, and this one, to get the answer for this, you just set c plus 7 equal to 0. So instead of positive 7, you're going to have a negative 7. All right, and that one only has one answer because it is a perfect square. So number 23 is the last one we're going to cover. And number 23, what happens here is that it looks more complicated than it really is. Remember, fractions are your friends. So we do our 4 steps, and step 1 should be check to see if everyone's on the same side. Well, not everybody is. The n squared is positive, so I have to move the 1/9 over instead. So I'm going to add the 1/9 across. So let's rewrite that so it looks correct. And don't forget to do the equal 0 at the end, because once again, we started off with an equal, so we should have an equal before we get done. Now, the next step is going to be take and check to see if it's in descending power order. N squared, n, no n. So yes, it is in descending power order. Step 3 is factor. Now, this is the part where some of you are dreading, and it's actually super simple. You still cut the n squared in half because we are square rooting it. You still use the middle to do your plus signs. Now, what is the square root of 1? Well, it's 1. What is the square root of 9? It's 3. To do your OI check, 1/3 n plus 1/3 n gives me 2/3 n. So therefore, my answer is n plus 1/3 quantity squared equals 0. So when I set this equal to 0 in the very final answer, n is going to equal negative 1/3. And that's it. So I want you to continue on, finish number 22. I want you to look at number 24 also. And that should conclude this video.